For the record, I'm Sara Tucker. This is an interview for the Kansas Women Lawmakers Oral History Project. It's with Ann Cozine, who is a Democrat from District Number 81, Mulvane, who was elected in 1990. So you're in your second year of your first term of the
That's right.
legislature. Let me start out by asking you why you're a Democrat.
I'm a Democrat. Well, I guess because I believe in a liberal interpretation of the Constitution. That's probably a good part of it.
Have you always been one? Is this a childhood?
No, I was an independent before I was a Democrat.
Okay.
My parents were Democrat, though, and they came from Arkansas. So they're probably more conservative type of Democrat. But,
Okay. How did you come to get into politics, and especially elected politics?
Well, one of the reasons why was that I had been involved with mental health in advocating for homeless people, people who are mentally ill, and the health care situation has become so terrible that I felt like I wanted to be involved in the solution of some of these things.
Now, you are a registered nurse, and you also list as your occupation management consultant. So had you sort of gone from being a practicing nurse into this management before you got into politics?
Yes.
Okay. You were elected to the Kansas House in 1990. Tell me about how this came about. I noticed you had a tough primary election. You beat two other people and so on. Were you recruited? How did you come to?
Well, actually, what happened was that I was in church one day, and one of the individuals there said, we really ought to have someone run against the current incumbent, because you call her and she doesn't respond. And then I was told she wasn't living in the district, and a number of other things led to this. And at first I really didn't think of running myself particularly, but I would have been willing to help someone else. But as things evolved, I found out that I felt that I was the best qualified person to do this of the people that I knew that were running, so I just ran.
You just ran. Had you been involved in any other campaigns for somebody else before then, or?
No, I hadn't.
Just really plunged right in the deep end. That's very brave, I would think. You won. What led you to win the primary, and what led you to win the general election, do you think?
Well, it's a lot of hard work. Getting out there every day and talking to people in my district, going door to door, even in places people never had been door to door before, and that was a lot of it, working with a determination to win.
Were there any issues, you think, that were very important in either the primary or the general election?
Yes, the property tax situation, the health care crisis. Those are both very important issues that were forefront in the voters' minds, I'm sure.
Did you walk alone? Did you have supporters? What kind of supporters did you have? What kind of help did you have?
I had some help with me. I had some probably what you would call political junkies that were pushing and helping to.
One of the reasons I ask this is something that has come up occasionally. Is, well, I couldn't have done it without the Federated Women's Club friends, or I couldn't have done it. Was there any particular group of people that you were able to turn to, or was this real? No, this was really just getting out and doing it. Did you use your children? Did you use anybody in your family?
My daughter and some of her friends helped.
Okay.
They did. Some of my friends helped. Various different people. I did have, some of that help from people that I knew. And they weren't all linked together. It was just all really, it's very, very, very strange, because a lot of these people didn't even know each other, but they knew me, and they helped me. So
that's very impressive. How did it go for money? How were you able to raise money? Did you have a problem with money?
Well, I didn't have a problem because I won the primary and then I won the general. However, I won both elections on less than $4,000, and that's the least that anyone has probably won an election on in a while.
Would that was what it usually cost. Well, that's again something really an amazing story. You made it. You got elected. How did you see your job when you came here? Were there certain committee assignments you thought you wanted? Were there any mentors you hoped to have? And how did it turn out?
I thought I wanted to be on the Appropriations Committee, but as it turns out, I wound up being on the committees that I was better suited for. I'm a registered nurse. I'm on Public Health and Welfare, and I believe that I'm very well suited for that committee, and also the Insurance Committee, particularly because I was so interested in, and am so interested in, trying to find a solution for this healthcare crisis, and then in helping to find a solution for that. And then the Elections Committee. I think that's very exciting to me. I enjoy that.
So were any of these ones you asked for, or you just kind of...
Yes, we did have an opportunity to list the ones that we really wanted to be on.
Okay. And you got some,
and I
but not
got
others.
what I wanted.
Okay. How would you describe your job here? What is your job, and how do you do it?
Okay. Well, let's see. It's a lot of different things. One of the things is to keep a pulse on what's going on here, and to make the public aware of what's going on. So it's education in one, reporting and education, and I do that because I write a weekly column for 2 local newspapers at home. The other part of that is to collect data from my district, and to do a lot of reading and studying about what's going on generally in the state and in the nation, on the especially on the hot issues that are before us right now, that everyone's concerned about, and to try and get as much information on those and educate again. And also to get information from people in my district about the things that concern them most, and how all this interplays, so that I can make the best decisions for my district and also for the state.
Everybody talks about outcomes analysis now. What outcomes are you going to look for that tell you you're being successful, you're going to be winning more than you lose? what are you looking to be able to say in, say, 6 years? Yes,
That I did?
Yeah. Or what have you done?
Some of the goals. Okay. For one thing, mental health reform.
Okay.
For the Topeka State catchment area, including Sedgwick County, and for Mulvane, what that would mean would, in one respect, and something that I was talking to people in Sedgwick County and Sumner County about this morning, is to combine services. Now, Sumner County Mental Health has a satellite mental health station in Mulvane, but Mulvane is a town that is separated by a county line, and Sumner County has a very small population in Mulvane, whereas Sedgwick County has the much larger population. However, the services are on the Sumner County side. Sedgwick County people can utilize the services, but they are not the first priority, and they have to pay out-of-county cost in order to use those services.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I'm trying to do now, and I'm finding that it may not necessarily require a change in the law to do this, but to facilitate some cooperation between the counties so that they can provide services at the same cost and same priority for Sedgwick County people as for Sumner County people. And I think that we will get that worked out. So some things, it's just, some of the things require change in the law. Some things just require some urging, I think, you know, and working together and getting people together to negotiate the solutions.
Okay. How would you describe your district and what it's interested in and what issues are important to it?
Well, you know, I thought that I would get a lot more input from people than I have. I've been surprised that there isn't as much as I had thought there would be. But some of the main things that I get a lot of input about are property tax, people who are on fixed income, mainly in my district, it's fixed income. A few commercial property owners complain about how high the property tax has gotten. A lot of the people think that it should be resolved with some of the ideas that Governor Finney has had. A lot of them think sales tax is the way to go, and a lot of them think upper level income tax, you know, the whole gamut, really, you know. The other thing is health care, and I get a lot on that, probably because I'm a nurse, the committee I'm on, and then, you know, I hear from people in and out of my district about that, and also on election issues. I hear from people out of my district on those types of issues from time to time.
That's interesting.
But some of the things that I hear about are people who are living on Social Security income, women particularly, who are widows, who are living on such a meager income, under $700 a month, some of them under, let's see, one woman, I think it was $420 a month, something like that. One lady in my district lives on, what was it, $560 or $660 a month, just right at the poverty line for being able to receive quite a few of the benefits, you know, that she'd be eligible for. People want to stay in their homes, and her property tax was more than what 1 month's income was. And of course, she's 82 years old, and she's got some other health care problems, and she has to buy medicine. Medicines are so expensive. And so it's very difficult for people to live on such a low income, to be able to pay for medications, even if they do have Medicare or Medicaid or whatever, have to pay for medications, have to pay for property tax and all that. and still stay in their home. But I feel like we should do everything that we can to keep people in their home, because we are the 7th highest in the nation in the number of institutions, and 4th, I believe it is, in the nation as far as the number of nursing homes. And the cost of nursing homes is preventing us from being able to spend more money on education and some of the other things we would like to improve in the state. And it doesn't seem to really be adding to the quality of life of a number of individuals. We need to be finding ways to put this money into more community services for people. And I was very happy yesterday that we seem to have arrived at something that most of the people in the room were satisfied with on this. It was called the pre-screening bill, but now we have a substitute bill that's gained a lot of favor, and it's called an assessment and referral bill. And what we'll be able to do now is do assessments and referrals for people who are self-paying clients before they go into nursing homes, and tell them about other resources that are out there, and also collect information about the types of things they need, so that people who would like to develop these community services can know what the needs are out there, and to develop the services that will hopefully help people be able to stay out of nursing homes.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Have you had any mentors or role models for how to try to get things done in the legislature? How have you begun to educate yourself to do your job?
Okay, well, part of it's been a little bit by trial and error, realizing that things get passed a whole lot quicker the more people you can get to support something. And so I guess, knowing also the kinds of things that keep things from happening. Not enough information. People need to make sure they thoroughly research whatever they're doing, and that they're not reinventing the wheel, right?
Right.
And because I think a lot of times we try to do that. And at first, it was funny, because I had, 9 bills last time that I introduced, and of course none of them were passed. I did get one resolution passed, though, so I learned something. I learned how to get something passed by getting that resolution. Well, I had 2 resolutions passed. One was during the veto session, but the other one, I did that by going around and getting most of the Democrats and most of the Republicans to sign on with me. And by doing that, I had almost unanimous acceptance already. And so if you can do that, that's one way that I've learned that you can get passage. If you can get enough support prior to introducing it, then it's properly going to go. But if you can't, then you probably need to go back and research it and find out where the problems are, ask people what the problems are, and see what you can do. It is a lot of having to rethink it. You can't get your feelings hurt, although you do get your feelings hurt from time to time about things, but it's best if you can accept that everything isn't going to work out the way you want it to most of the time, and you're going to have to go back and rework things, and you're going to have to go back and change things. You're going to have to negotiate. You're going to have to compromise on quite a few things to where it get the, a good consensus of the whole group.
So, one question we ask, and obviously there's more of an answer after 10 years than 1 year. Are there any victories or achievements that you've had so far that seem to you to be particularly memorable, or just exactly what you were trying to do?
Well, last year, this bill didn't get passed. It wasn't my bill, but I was for it last year, the one for the assessment referral. And I'm glad that it looks like this time it's going to come out of the committee, and I think that it will be passed because it's a good bill and it has wide acceptance now. So I feel good about that. I feel good about the resolution that I got passed last time, because most people don't get a bill or resolution passed the first year. So it was, and what it was to send a message to Congress to give the pension back to veterans with mental illness, and it went through both the House and Senate, was signed, and it passed. So I felt real good about that, because that was something that made it all the way through.
Well, it sounds like you not only jumped in the deep end, but are past treading water and beginning to swim. That sounds pretty good for a year and a little bit.
Yeah.
Are you planning to run for re-election and continue to do this?
Yes, I think it'd be foolish to stop now. I think that now I can begin to get some things done. I've learned the processes that I need to go through, and I just have to be energetic enough and stay organized and stay on top of it and keep going. But yeah, I think now I can start putting some of these skills that I've learned to use.
Sounds good. I'd like to turn to the more personal side of all this, and want to emphasize that I'm only asking the things you're willing to answer. But how do you manage to do all of this? You're from Mulvane, that's 3 hours away. You've told me a 14-year-old daughter and 3 other children. How do you manage your commute? How do you manage to do all your family duties as well as this job?
I don't know. You just do it. You're a woman, you just do it. Yeah, that's one thing. You just get used to doing the things that you need to do at home, right? To take care of your home, take care of your children, and then other things that you think are important, you just add those to it, to your list of things that you think are important to do, and you do those too.
Now, if I've got this straight, you have, of course, a home in Mulvane, and you come up here and you take an apartment during the session, and you told me your 14-year-old daughter is going to school here. What about your other 3 children? What are they doing?
They're all grown.
They're all grown,
right.
So that makes it easier.
Yeah. And here, I share a house with a school teacher, and she's there part of the time also. So it works out real well, because there's always someone there. I make sure my daughter gets on the school bus in the morning, and everything's safe and sound there, and then she comes home, and there's usually someone home pretty shortly after she's home, So that works out well too.
I don't usually get told people are doing this for the money. As a matter of fact, what I usually hear is there's a real financial penalty. You're a nurse and you're in management. How do you manage to earn your family a living and interrupt it to become a legislator?
Okay, well, I do get some support from my former spouse.
Okay.
One of the very lucky ones, I suppose, in that respect, because 90% of men are not paying child support. So there is one way, and I work part-time as a nurse now. I no longer do the management consultant business. It would just be too much. but I do these two things now.
So nursing is such that you're able to sign on when
I have a job now that, excuse me, that works pretty well with the legislature, and I'm the community outreach nurse for a small hospital in Wichita, and I do some education programs, help with some marketing things, and then I'm the patient advocate at the hospital, and that works out pretty well.
And they're willing to let you...
That's a part-time, 20 hours a week there.
I see.
And then my other income, and then this.
Doesn't sound like you're going to get rich, but...
No.
You told me that your daughter seems to enjoy this challenge, that she likes to come up here, and that's very fortunate. Are there any penalties for your family that you've seen? Any problems with your family with this?
With the moving?
With the moving and the campaigning and the possibility that Mama's going to get rejected and all the different ways it could be hard on a family.
You know, I think she understands that those are things that can happen. You know, we talked about all those things before I ran, and she's very mature, thinking person for her age. It's been commented on quite a bit, that, you know, and has a pretty good understanding of all this. So she's been willing to. In fact, she encouraged me to go ahead and do it.
Sounds like a good kid. What about you? Can you name some pluses and minuses for you doing this?
For me doing this? Well, the fact that there is a possibility that I might not win my next election, and that right now I'm working part-time. Would I be going back to work full-time, or what will I be doing with my time once this is over? However, you know, that's just one of those things that can happen. I feel like I'm pretty well have a lot of support in the district, and that I will win the next election when I run. I believe I will. I've tried to do the right things, you know, and tried to be good about constituent services and answering phone calls and correspondence and that sort of thing, and writing my columns and being in the community and being very visible and accessible. So, and I believe that from what I can tell with the surveys and all, and people tell me that I'm doing a good job. So I haven't had any complaints to my face. That doesn't mean
I think that's a good sign, though.
Yeah.
So despite the pace and everything, you seem to feel this is something you want to do, and you are happy doing it. This is a good occupation.
Yes.
This is not that unusual anymore. There are 45 women in the Senate and the House together. But it is something that until recently most women didn't do. Is there anything in your birth family background that you can trace your political interest, your political talents to? Where were you brought up? What kind of parents did you have?
I guess my mother strikes me. Okay, my grandfather was a school teacher, and in Arkansas, and he was a traveling teacher. He used to go around and teach at different little schools, and I guess he taught all of his children and neighbor children all at the same time in a one-room schoolhouse at one time. And my mother was real good at memorizing poetry and that sort of thing, and
she used to stand on her little soapbox and give speeches and say poetry, you know. And she's was a pretty strong-minded woman, pretty independent person. So I probably got something of that from her. But something else that I've heard, and I have to check into this because I don't know if this is true, but my brother says that we need to check back into our genealogy because he says that he believes that we might have been related to Lyndon B. Johnson.
And all it would take would be one Johnson gene to get you in politics.
And that might be all it would take.
So were you brought up in Arkansas? Or
my dad was in the military.
And
my mother was a registered nurse. And we moved around quite a lot.
Okay.
So that's another thing. I've been used to talking to strangers and to, you know, lots of different kinds of people, and just sort of settling in and making a home where I go.
I think that the new kid in school thing, which is not always a lot of fun, does produce certain traits very often. And if you were new a lot of different places then. So you attended Wichita State University, where you got your nurse's degree. But your BSN was in Wichita in 1985. Where did you get your original training? Or
That's where I got my registered nurse's training.
Where were you educated before that? Or was this your first professional training?
This was the first, yes.
Okay.
First professional training.
Well, let me backtrack then. I guess what I'm really saying is you seem to have had a first career as a housewife.
Well,
was that what you thought you were going to do with your life?
Not really. I was a practical nurse.
Okay.
In Texas before, and yes, I was a housewife also. My former husband was a physician's assistant in the military, and as I said, I had moved quite a lot when my father was in the military, and then I had lived in Texas and Arizona and Texas, and then here after with my former.
Okay, so you had moved here to Mulvane with your former spouse, and I take it things eventually did not work out and you got divorced.
Yeah.
And at that point you decided to get the nurse's degree and...
well, I had that.
You had that?
Before the divorce.
Okay.
It happened about the same time,
About the same time.
Yeah.
Of course, the reason I'm interested in all of this, and the only reason, is if there was some moment, some turning point in your life when you suddenly said, this isn't working out and I want to go do something else. But it sounds like instead it was just a development, a natural development.
To be a politician?
Get married, have kids, become a nurse, get involved,
sure.
Go to the legislature, as opposed to a big turning point at any one time.
Right. Although I think the big turning point probably, well, most of this was sort of a natural development, but then I think also there were some, you've heard that about the book, do they call that? It's the Predictable Crises of Adult Life.
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. Okay. Every 7 years.
It's also the 7-year itch, but that's different.
Yes. How as we develop.
Yes.
You know, and I think that these things do happen, and there is a place you can say, okay, there's a marking point here, benchmark in my life, and another one, so forth and so on. And I guess one probably happened when I was around 35 years old and decided to go back to college and have my last child, you know, around that time. And then here again, ending, you know, college, and unfortunately, divorce was around that time too. And then a new phase of my life at that point.
where then I was a single parent. College graduate. Things, doors closing and other doors opening, and just what do you want to make of your life at this point? And there were some things that also happened that were probably critical to what has happened. I have a son that has disabilities. And this is one of the reasons why I'm interested in the mental health area so deeply. And then it's difficult to explain all these things.
I think it is for everybody.
They're very personal.
Yes, they are. Which is why we don't want to go past where you were comfortable talking about it. Where do you see women going in politics? Do you think there's any change in politics with more women in it? Where would you expect us all to be in 10 or 20 years?
Where would I expect women to be?
Women, Kansans, Americans, legislators, whatever.
Okay. In 10 or 20 years, what do I think we'll be? Boy. Well, I wish I could tell you, but I think history, a lot of times it repeats itself. Some things that I see right now, I don't know if it means we're going to be going forward or backwards. It would be very difficult to say. I think probably 5 years ago I would have told you I see great hopes for women and that things are going to be really well for women, but at this point, the economy being the way it is and other things being the way they are, and I think people are more frightened, and I think things in some way things have regressed a bit, but
when you say in some way, could you spell it out at all? Attitudes, issues, specifics?
Some of the attitudes, I think, are beginning to regress a bit.
Maybe a little bit of backlash? Or
yes, could be. When jobs get less plentiful, women are the first ones to lose them.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. Have you felt as though being female in any way affects your job as a politician, in terms of how you campaign, in terms of how you're treated or perceived in the legislature, in terms of what issues you deal with or expected to deal with?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there are some things that maybe because of the fact that I am the profession that I'm in is mainly a female profession, but it's an area where nurses probably have a better understanding of nurses and women probably have a greater understanding in the public health and welfare area than a lot of men do. And that may sound a little too stereotypical, I don't know, but we are the ones who deal closest with the human problems and human frailties of people.
Yeah. Do you think it affects how you campaign, or do you think you are, is it a problem or an issue when you meet your constituents?
Is it a problem?
Yeah. Do people vote for you because you're a woman, against you because you're not a woman? Doesn't seem to really matter?
Gee, I don't know. In the primary, I ran against 2 men.
Mm-hmm.
I really think it's because, well, part of it could have been because I was a better campaigner.
Could be.
My information was better. I did a better job. Really did in the whole campaigning process, you know. But I ran against a woman in the general election too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they saw again that my qualifications were better, and that I had more sincerity, more commitment to what I was doing again. So I think that whether you're a man or a woman, I think those are the things that have to come across.
Is there something I should have asked you that I might have asked you that you'd like to get on the record that I've missed?
I hadn't really thought about it that much, if there's anything special.
Oh, great! I didn't miss anything then.
I guess not, really. Maybe one thing though, that I was never a very political person before, until certain things happened in my life to make me want to take this action. And if I can do this, I believe anybody else that is concerned and willing to work hard enough for it could do it also.
So there really are opportunities, including for women out there.
And
now.
I don't. Maybe at one time I also thought what someone had said. Some people think that one person's vote doesn't count, and that one person's opinion doesn't count. But I don't believe that. You can make your vote count. You can make your opinion count if you want it to bad enough. And in the sense, that's what I've done by being elected to the legislature. And people, we are very attuned to, we want to hear people's opinions. And it does matter. As we began this interview, one of the things that I mentioned then was that I'm surprised that more people don't talk to their legislators about their concerns. The ones who do are very few, and oftentimes we listen to a small minority of people. And so one person's voice does matter.
Well, it sounds like you have a job you care about and that you're working very hard to do, and I think that's great for Kansas.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Oh.